Welcome indeed. I'm John Weeks, and a good morning to you. And welcome to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. You're listening live, actually, at 11 a.m. here in Melbourne. And today is Thursday, the 17th of April. And I'm John Weeks, and I'm flying solo for this morning. Peter Watts is currently active in a big Christian camp in the town called Elmore, which is somewhere in Victoria. It's a big Christian camp there, so he's going to be heavily involved in that, and I'm sure he's going to be very busy indeed. So you got me for the hour, and what I'll be doing on this program is giving you my testimony, and my testimony, which is, it's something I've shared to a few people. And I'm going to call the topic for the program called He Leadeth Me. It sounds a bit of Old Testament speak there, but He Leadeth Me. And what prompted me to choose that topic and also tie in with my testimony is a hymn, He Leadeth Me. And the hymn goes, He leadeth me, O blessed thought. He leadeth me, O blessed thought. O words of heavenly comfort fraught. Whatever I do, wherever I be, still God's hand leadeth me. He leadeth me by his own hand. He leadeth me, his faithful follower I would be. For by his hand he leadeth me. So my story, basically, I'm going to start really about 13 years ago. 13 years ago, at that time, I did not believe in God. It was further from my mind. Prior to that, I had a keen interest in all things strange, all things unusual, and I embraced many elements of the New Age scene. But I showed very little interest in Christianity. And during these years, I've been on community radio for 29 years. And on another radio station, and I started back in 1996. And I had a program that was called Spectrum, and it was a program that really delved into the elements of the New Age and, of course, a lot of things that were strange and unusual, which attracted me. And the program went for 17 years. So during those early years, when you do a program like that, you basically you get influenced by a lot of things that come your way. I attended different meetings. You get invited to attend. Well, I appeared and attended to seance meetings, for example, just to give you an idea. And also in those seance meetings, people gathered around. I was in that sort of circle just to see, as an observer, really, just to see what people were doing. And they were contacting, I guess, people on what they call the other side. So that sort of interests me in a way. I also attended meetings on about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, or now called UAP, and also attended meetings of alien abduction. So you can see where my interest was going all over the place, and I was being influenced or been excited by some of these topics. I also attended different things like channeling, seance, like I said, seance channeling. Well, channeling's basically people were contacting other beings, things like ascended masters. They were using that sort of term, and people from other worlds. So that was quite weird when you think about it in hindsight. I also was present at psychic healings where a practitioner would lay his hands on a person for whatever element or ailment that person may have had, and the psychic would delve into the presence or the mind or the what they call the spirit of the universe to heal the person. I saw a man heal a person's eyesight. A woman, had 85% vision impaired. And by the very fact that the practitioner put his hands behind the eyeballs of the woman, and she was able to see extremely clear after that. So I saw some strange things like that. Also had sort of beliefs in pantheism. You know, the planet was seeded by aliens, space brothers, as they call it. I was involved in all this, following the topic of metaphysics. So that was another element of where my interests lie. I was caught up with the law of attraction. There you go, law of attraction. I attended a lot of conspiracy meetings, meetings where the New World Order was taking over the planet and was controlling the people, controlling the environment, controlling the governments, controlling the economy and the planet, and involved the Bilderbergers and involved a lot of very rich and wealthy people. So there were so many those conspiracies that sort of I had an interest in to see where the truth lied. Of course, during my radio show, I interviewed a lot of people in these areas. and I guess in hindsight, I was seeking to find out where the truth is, seeking to see where some of this truth that I may discover that will affect my life and give me direction. And basically, I was searching. Further on, as my interest grew in a lot of these areas, I was very fascinated in looking at the healing of people. I attended Reiki, what they called Reiki, a Chinese sort of, I don't know how you describe it, modality of healing, where you put hands on the person and you seek the energy of the universe. And so I attended workshops, attended a lot of training. I was regarded as what they called a Reiki master. And I went to level 2 on that. I know it sounds weird, but that's the sort of talk I was in, or the movement I guess I was in. So that was fascinating. It was fascinating at the time, and I discovered that there were people also that was following all this. So you get to meet people, and you're attracted to people of like mind, and then you also develop friendships with those people, and by doing that, you're also introduced further into these sort of areas that I just mentioned. But Christianity, it really did not come into my view, my radar, if you like. For some reason, there was something that was holding me back. And I now know what it was, but I'll explain that a little later. But Christianity was boring, even though I had a background, and I'll explain what my background is a little later on. But there was something that was missing still, and I was still searching. What I did, I started getting involved in reading books and other topics. And every so often, a Christian book or a Christian person that affronted me, and even callers ringing me while I was doing my radio show. And there was from my memory that criticised me for putting a particular content on my radio show. And that content was basically, I was delving into a topic where there was 2 researchers exploring this planet, and they were looking at what they were discovering as crystal skulls that was in different countries. And apparently if you put all these skulls together, you're able to be enlightened and you'll be able to reach, different things. So it all got very strange, but there's something that turned my world around. My worldview of life fell in disarray. And I'll start mentioning that during the next, after this music break. You're listening to Faith FM.
Ring the one ring once to Jesus. Why don't you bring them in, 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 bring them from the field of sin. Bring them in. shepherds fall away.
My brothers,
Bring them, bring them, yeah, bring them, bring them, bring them, bring them from the fields of sand. Bring them, yeah, bring them, bring the wandering ones to Jesus. Now tell me who'll go on hell? Is the shepherd's kind, helping the wandering ones to find, who'll bring the lost ones to the fold, where they'll be sheltered from the cold.
My brothers,
Bring them, yeah, yeah, bring them, yeah, bring them, bring them from the fields of sand. Bring them, yeah, bring them, bring the wandering ones to Jesus. Out in the desert, hear their cry. Out on the mountains, high and wide. Hark this the Master speak to thee. Go find my sheep wherever they be. When you find them, bring them, yeah, bring them, bring them from the field of sand. Bring them, yeah, bring them, bring the wandering ones to Jesus. When you find them, bring them, yeah, bring them, bring them from the field of sand. Bring them, yeah, bring them, bring the wandering ones to Jesus. Bring them in, 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 bring them from the field of sand. Bring them in, bring them in, bring them in, bring them in, bring the wandering ones to Jesus.
all Christians,
Bring them in, yeah, bring them in, bring them from the fields of sand. Bring them in, yeah, bring them in, bring the wandering ones to Jesus.
brothers,
Bring them in, bring them in, bring them in, bring them from the field of sand. Bring them in, yeah, bring them in, bring the wandering ones to Jesus.
There's a track by the Rhyming Brothers, Bring Them In. Very dramatic there. You're listening to Light in the Dark, Faith FM. You're listening to, and I think I may have given you the wrong call sign. We're 88.0, or it could be 87.8 or 87.6, no matter wherever you are around Australia. So just thought I'd give that out. And the topic today. Oh, by the way, I think I might mention the text line as well. We have a text line here, which is 0488 880 831. Again, that number 0488 880 831. And you can also check out the Faith FM's website, which is very simple, faithfm.com.au, and you can find out all the programs that are featured on Faith FM. We also have a Faith FM app, which you can download on your phone. So just go to your wherever, I guess, I don't know what search engine you can find to get the app, And you can also listen to the shows on demand. By the way, we're going to have a free offer, a book offer, and I'll mention that in the next break. In the meantime, I'm dealing with the topic. The topic, He leadeth me. And I explained before the music break that I was in a world where, with my testimony, I was in another world, but it wasn't Christianity. And basically what happened, what turned my world around, my worldview of life, I guess my worldview of life fell in disarray because I have a very good friend, and her name's Christine, and she followed me. She knew what I was doing on the radio, and she knew where my direction that I was leading into the New Age scene primarily. And I was sort of making remarks about the Bible and putting it down, really. And she challenged me. She said, John, I'm getting tired of hearing you putting the Bible down. I challenge you, I'll listen to you, but I'll challenge you to read it. And if you read it and study it, then I'll listen to your opinion. Now, I like a challenge. I like a good challenge. And I said, okay, Christine, I'll take up the challenge. I never got involved in the Christianity, never got involved in the Bible, never had one in my possession. And I said, where do I go to find out? It's a big book. Where do I start? And she said, well, we have a Thursday night meeting with a group of people, Christians, and we study the Bible each Thursday night. And it was in the town of Upwey where I currently live. And she invited me to attend, and which I did on Thursday night around about 7:30. There was about 7 Christians there. And when I arrived, they welcomed me and they started to study, and it was the book of Genesis. And right on the outset, right on chapter 1. And with all my influences, I was struggling. I said, come on, guys, Earth created in 7 days. It doesn't gel with me. I'm struggling here. And they said, that's okay. You knew it's something that you haven't been exposed to with God's word, etc. And they prayed for me, and they asked me, are you coming back next week? And I said, yeah, all right, I'll come back next week. Now, next week came around. Now, before I attended the meeting, I had planned on the Friday to go. I lived in Belgrave at the time, and my plan was to catch a bus from Belgrave right up top of the mountains of the Dandenong Ranges in Victoria and walk down the ranges back into the town of Belgrave, which is several kilometres. I'm a photographer, so I love taking photos of nature. So keep that in mind. So on the Thursday night prior, I attended the meeting. Again, they continued with the topic, the book of Genesis. And again, I struggled. And I said, I just can't get a handle on it. And they said, that's fine. You can, look, we can pray for you again. And they did. And they said to me again, are you coming back next week? And I said, maybe. Yeah, I'll see. I'll see how the week pans out. Now, went home Friday morning, did what I planned to do, catch a bus from Belgrave right up to the Dandenong Ranges and walk down. It was just very early in the morning. So I love being in the nature very early in the morning with my camera because I love taking photos of nature. As I was walking down, I approached the town of Belgrave. Now, in Belgrave, for those who don't know, in the Dandenong Ranges, we have a tourist train. It's called Puff and Billy, and the track goes right through the mountains. And I arrived at the perimeter of the railway station. It was, like I said, early morning, and I thought, okay, there's no one around. And then I turned the corner, and there was a man leaning against the fence. And I thought, okay, I'm by myself. I'm with someone here. And as I approached him, he directly looked at me, and he told me, the book of Genesis is true. And I thought, what? I thought, what's happening here? And I said to the guy, because I talk to anybody, and I said to the guy, look, I was studying this last night. And this man, he was probably in his late 50s. He wore a pair of jeans and a checkered shirt. But he said to me, it is true. It is true. And he sort of quoted a few scriptures, which didn't really relate to me because I wasn't familiar with scriptures in the Bible. And I was getting a little apprehensive, a little bit of nervousness. What are the odds of someone approaching you with that topic, the one that you were struggling with the previous night? So I said to him, look, hang on a second, I just want to take a photo of this train, to take a photo of the train prepping up. So I turned just around away from him, took the photo, went back to finish the conversation. He was nowhere there. It was an open area. He couldn't have disappeared anywhere. He couldn't have run behind a bush or a tree or shed. He just was not there. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? So I was getting goosebumps and I thought, this is supernatural going on. I don't know what's going on. So I kept it all, it stayed with my mind throughout the week, this whole experience. And on the Thursday, I showed up again at the meeting and they said to me, I told them the story, and there was a couple of people there, a couple of women, they were crying in joy, because they said, I think, John, I think you might have met an angel. And I said, well, I don't know. I'm not into all this, but it certainly was a supernatural experience. So again, when I look at the topic, He leadeth me, I can see in hindsight that God led me to attend this meeting again. And I started continuing the home Bible study on a Thursday night. And I started developing a very keen interest in God's truth. Still new to me. And so I started looking at, obviously the Bible. I was given a Bible. And I attended also Bible presentations. People who were doing the circuit, if you like, of seminars and people like Mark Woodman, who's passed on. There were certain Christian ministries that I attended. I didn't get involved with any church, but I still continued with going to some of these lectures and seminars. I also picked up a lot of Christian books, and some were donated to me by Christians, many from Seventh-day Adventists, and very generous of them to do that. I was also given DVDs, and from DVDs of preachers like Doug Batchelor, Walter Vyth, Mark Finley, a whole lot more. And I only discovered just about a year ago when I was cleaning out a house, I had 120 DVDs given to me during that period. Very generous folk that provided me. I also had a lot of God moments in my life. As I was studying the Bible on the bus, for example, I don't drive, I use public transport, and I'm in the bus reading a scripture. And so for example, if I was reading a quote like a scripture, the truth will set you free. All of a sudden I heard a voice at the back of the bus saying those very words in a conversation. I looked around, couldn't identify who that person was, but the coincidence of that happening was quite bizarre. So I thought, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but that happened about 3 times when I was on public transport. So the first year I studied the Word, but it was through the lens of my own understanding. And God knocked that away from me, and I was beginning to see things that I'd never realised. So the next music break, I'm going to explain just what happened as I developed my interest in Christianity. It's an interesting story. You're listening to Faith FM, A Light in the Dark, and also, there's a track called Home to You, which is sung by the Peace Soul Sisters. Interesting track.
I've been traveling this road for miles, trying to get to where you are. I know you're telling me the way to go, but I just can't hear you over my heart. Give me grace to make it through the night. Give me faith so I can see the light. Give me strength so I can make it home to you, home to you. My feet are tired of carrying this load. Seems like I'm walking around and around. I need somebody to help me out.
love that country sound. That was the Pissau Sisters and Home to You. You're listening to Faith in the Dark, Light in the Dark, in fact, on Faith FM. I'm John Weeks. I'm flying solo without Peter Watts for today's program. And I'm going to continue with my topic, He Leadeth Me. But before I do, I just want to again mention our text line in the studio. You can text us on 0488 880 831. Again, that number is 0488 880 831. Now, we have a special free offer for you. If you text on that number, you will receive a book. Yeah, free book. No obligation. We'll provide a book to you. The book is called The Light at the End. And the author of that book is Steve Wahlberg. And Steve Wahlberg is an amazing preacher. So, again, if you put in your text message this ALD 58, okay, ALD 58 in your text, and we'll make sure that we'll get you the book that you asked for. So the text line, again, is 0488 880 831. Now, part 3, He Leadeth Me. Yeah. I moved on, started to develop my interest in Christianity. And in the first year, I was told by a pretty prominent person in the Christian church, they said, John, you know, I've met a lot of people who's just started out. And I found that in the Christian's first year, there can be an incident where you be severely tested as a new Christian. And I thought, don't know what that means. What does that mean? He said, yeah, look, different stories come through, but you'll find out in your life in this first year of being a Christian. I thought, that sounds a little bit of a mystery there, I thought. Now, what happened when I was, again, on community radio, the radio station was located at the time in Emerald, which is in the Dandenong Ranges in Victoria. And I was doing a program on a Saturday morning called Spectrum, which I mentioned earlier on. And during the program, I got a phone call from my landlord because I was renting in Belgrave, again in the Dandenong Ranges. And my landlord said, John, you need to come back to home because there's something happened to the house. And thankfully, it was at the end of the program. I had another radio representative that filled in for me for pretty much the last half hour. So I managed to get home. And when I arrived home, the house that I was living in and renting, it was pretty much wrecked. 2.5 trees fell through the house, smashing the whole back of the house and big cracks in the walls. And I thought, wow, I didn't expect that. And the landlord ultimately said, look, you know, it is a dangerous now. It is, it's unlivable because, you know, it's fragile. The house could collapse even further. And I was at loss. I was at a loss. And it plagued on me, and I've had nowhere to go, nowhere to stay, whatever. And I got an inkling of what people go through when they have this homelessness in their lives, and that went through my life. So thankfully, again, my good friend Christine, who I mentioned earlier in part 1 here on the show, she said, John, look, I'm renting at the moment, and the owners of the house that I'm staying in, they're moving away to Perth for about 6 months. You're more than welcome. Give them a ring and see whether you can stay in the extra bedroom of the house. And I thought, oh, thank you. So I contacted them, and they said, yeah, that's fine. We work out a rental arrangement and et cetera. Now, so in this house that was wrecked, I had a lot of belongings, had a lot of books, a lot of things that I sort of attached to. And I was packing to store these things, all this material, all books and whatever, to a storage area that I found. But I was getting very depressed in the 2 days. And I even though I was gratified that I had a house to go to, but it was still, my world was wrecked. And my attitude towards God also was tested. And I was getting angry with God, saying, how dare you put me in this predicament, as much as I was going to, I was following you, but look what happened. And I got so distraught. So basically I moved into this other house for a few days, but I was still very depressed. So I went back, when I was staying at this house in Upway, went back to the old damaged house. Very early in the morning, I caught a train, got up there, sat on all the boxes that I packed, and I just sat there and I felt rather despondent. And before I knew it, it was late afternoon. I didn't even realise there was a time element from early morning to late afternoon. And the last memory, obviously, was when I was walking towards this house that I was going to, that I was staying, this rental. And I had no idea how I got there from the house and what I was doing in that early morning of the old house as I was walking into the house that I was going to stay temporarily. I was depressed and I was angry. And Christine was also angry with me because I was shutting her out. And so I crashed on the bed and I just thumped the pillow and cried out, Lord, why did you do this for me? Why? And I lost consciousness in a way because everything in my room just disappeared and I was in a sort of grey space, a very terrifying space where there was nothingness and I was terrified. And I was screaming of being afraid. And all of a sudden I heard a voice that said twice, the devil will tempt you when you are the most vulnerable. And I heard this voice coming through my mind. And I just didn't understand it. Then again, the voice said, the devil will tempt you when you are the most vulnerable. All of a sudden, I just woke up, if you'll call it that, and I was on the bed in another direction. I was sort of lopsided to the bed, and I was totally drenched to sweat, totally just sweating buckets, if you like. But all of a sudden I took a deep breath, and I just felt there was an incredible sense of freedom, a freedom that allowed me to straighten up and just brush away that terror that was in me. I walked out of the bedroom, saw Christine in the kitchen. I said, Christine, it's okay now. I'm okay. She then said to me, look, you had a phone call from a guy called Rick. And I said, look, I don't know any Rick. And he said, look, there's something about a rental that you may be interested in. And I thought, oh, okay. So I gave Rick a ring. And he lived in Belgrade. And he said, look, my partner or friend moving out of the house, I need someone else to share the house so I can share the rent. And I said, look, I'll come over. Now, the thought that very moment when I was in that the despondent mood or that anger towards God, all of a sudden on that very day, that late afternoon, I was now given an opportunity to go to another rental immediately within hours. And I thought, thank you, God. Thank you for that. And all that anger and all that fear and everything just dissipated. So I saw these sort of things that occurred in my life where you become despondent or you're struggling, and all of a sudden God intervenes in your life. And this was a prime example, and there's been many more since then. So I stayed. Then, obviously, I continued on with my study. And then I decided I needed more exposure to Christian folk. Again, my friend Christine said, look, there's a Christian mission going to Philippines. I think you need to contact the people organising that, and because that'll give you exposure to meeting people and seeing the work that Christian folk do, and you'll see where God works in their lives. And being a photographer, you can also then, contribute to the mission. So I contacted the people, Rose and Leo, that's were their names, and they have this mission called the International Christ, and they do missions twice a year. So I joined them, and that was in the Philippines, in an area where the mission was, a place called the region of Bangi in the Philippines. And initially, I didn't get involved really into the work that they were doing. They were doing presentations at night. They were providing blankets. They were providing food and spiritual guidance to the town, or the village, I should say. But as each day, the mission went for about maybe 12, 13 days. As each day unfolded, I was seeing things that I never saw before, where people had such strong and dedicated faith. And I could see the results of their work that they do, but also God's hand in providing their operations, and how it affected other people and how people's lives were touched by the mission work. And as the week unfolded, I was compelled to say, look, Lord, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this scene. I want to be part of this movement. And it got to the point, getting close to the end of the mission, I decided to be baptized. And the mission people were just so elated. They were so just overjoyed, and they embraced me. And they said, look, we can organise that. There's about 36 baptisms. You can be the 37th. So that's what happened. And I'll explain a little bit of that in the last quarter of this show, where there's been an incredible exposure to God, and also the direction which took me to where I am now. So the mission, it was very, very beneficial for me, and I would never forget the experience. Subsequent, I've been involved in 6 other missions following that at different countries, but I'll explain a little bit more about that after the next music break. And the next music break will feature a track that's done by, or put together by, the Dowsetts. And the track, I think it's very appropriate for the topic, particularly when you're discovering Jesus and the commitment and the effort you make. And the track is called Worth It. You're listening to Faith FM, A Light in the Dark.
Splendor of heaven, a crown, a robe, and a throne. But what kind of love would lead you to leave safety of that kind of home? I know that you willingly suffer. Why would you suffer for me? I know what I am, and I don't understand how I could be worth Calvary. When you knew I was lost, and you knew that a cross was the price you'd have to pay. When we cried, crucify, Lord, you didn't have to die, but you did it anyway.
useless old pieces of clay. But somehow you saw more, something worth dying for. You paid more than you should have paid. When you knew I was lost, and you knew that a cross was the price you'd have to pay. When we cried, crucify, Lord, you didn't have to die, but you did it anyway. Now I'll never see what you saw in me, 'cause you knew I would never be perfect. But I'm just so glad that somehow you thought I was worth it. Now I'm just so glad that somehow you thought I was worth it.
A lovely track there from the Dowsets, and the track called Worth It. Certainly is worth it if you're following your faith in God and following your direction of what God allows you to follow, and you can see where your commitment that you make, it is well worth it. You're listening to A Light in the Dark. I'm John Weeks, and this is Faith FM, of course. And just before I continue with my story, again, I'll refer to the special free offer that we have, a book, a lovely book called A Light at the End by Steve Wahlberg. If you would like a copy, and you could send us a text message and just type in the word ALD 58. Okay. Now the text line here is 0488 880 831. Again, 0488 880 831. And the book is, yes, The Light at the End by Steve Wahlberg. He publishes some great work, and he's a great preacher as well. So you'll get a lot out of that book. Now, continue with the story, part 4, really, if you want to, I broke the whole thing down to 4 parts. Now, prior to the music, I was telling you about how I joined a Philippines mission, and the intention was to be baptized. The day of the baptism was on a Sabbath, Saturday morning, but prior to that, Friday afternoon, I was this is in the area, the region of Bangi in the Philippines. I was with a guy called Emmanuel. He's the person who was doing presentations at night. Lovely fellow, lovely man. In fact, great name as well. And we were working through just basically the principles involved about the faith and making sure, what I was doing is correct and my understanding of God's word and the Bible, etc., etc. As we were walking down on the Friday afternoon down a laneway that was heading down towards the shore, the beach, in this region, we're pretty much the white people in the mission. Everyone was dark-skinned. But all of a sudden a man appeared out of the corner of the laneway, and he approached us and he said things like, "You're a Seventh-day Adventist," because I wasn't strictly Seventh-day Adventist, but Emmanuel was. "And you're Christians." And I said, and Emmanuel said, yeah, we're here doing presentations at night. He said, "Oh, you're a money-making thing." And he was using every argument to put the Christian folk, or us, down, for example. And he was saying, the devil's controlling you and all this sort of thing. But he kept looking at me more than Emmanuel. And I was getting a little nervous because he was quite angry, very angry in his words, swearing, cursing, you name it, he did it. But Emmanuel, I love this guy. He was so gentle and respectful, and he replied in a very gentle way. And I think that took the wind out of his sails a bit. And I just said to the guy, where are you based? I mean, you're local? I said, we're living opposite where you're having your presentations. I said, okay, all right. And then he stormed off. And I said to Emmanuel, what was that about? He said, don't know. I'll tell you more about that later. So the next night, of that very night, on the Friday night, we did our last presentation, or the mission did. We asked the locals who was this man who claimed he was living outside the area where we were holding our presentations. No one knew him. They'd never seen him before, don't know who he was, and I'm thinking, what was that about? I only found out, it made the connection about 12 months ago, where I was on a mission in Tanzania, and a pastor by the name of Pastor Busey, I told him my story, and he said, you know what, John, I think you were in the middle with your journey in faith. You were in the middle of a conflict, because at the start of your search or start of your journey, you met the stranger who may have been an angel, I think he was, and who directed you to continue on with the Bible. And that was right on the outset. And now you met this guy, another guy, who was trying to persuade you of giving up the faith and putting dark thoughts in your mind. So, John, he said, you were in the middle of that, and it just clicked for me. And yes, we are all in a conflict of good and evil. Anyway, I continued on. Next morning, had the mission, and the worship was held on the shore of the in this village of Bangui, and I was keen to begin with. I got there early, and in the Philippines, you don't know who the pastor is. Everyone loves giving out sermons or speeches or presentations, so you really don't know what's going on. And eventually someone said in English, we're going to have the baptisms after lunch. And I said to myself, I would rather have it now. But anyway, I continued. I thought, okay, I don't feel like lunch. So I went down to the shoreline. Now, what's happening in the shore at the beach? It was blowing like a gale. Winds blowing left, right, and sand. Sand was blowing. Trees were blowing. Everything. And I went down and I saw all this down the edge of the shore. And I just closed my eyes and I prayed to the Lord. I said, look, God, am I doing the right thing? Is this something that is for me? Is it for you, for me to be with you, etc.? And when I opened my eyes, the water was absolutely calm. The water had such an incredible colour that was just crystal clear. And I looked up either side of the shoreline and up, kilometres up to the left, kilometres up to the right. Everything was in clear definition, sharpness, everything. I closed my eyes. I didn't know what that was about. I closed my eyes. I said, Lord, I don't know what that was about, but I'm confident now to go to be baptized. And I went back. I started going back to the worship area. And again, everything was blowing like a gale. Trees were blowing. Sand was being sprayed around. And eventually we went to the shoreline. 37 of us were baptized and on the shore of the beach of Bangui. It was such a joy to be baptized and to be fully immersed in the water. And it was a commitment that I made. And since then, each day was meaningful for me to continue with my faith. There were many things that occurred after that. I'm cutting the story short a bit here now. About a year later, I went to Ireland. I went on a pilgrimage, a Christian pilgrimage, and it was put together by a Christian, and she pretty much described herself as a Christian pagan. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means. Go figure. But there was 17 of us. We went to all around Ireland on a bus that was hired. We explored the Celtic origins and also what Ireland was like before St. Patrick showed up on Ireland. So we're looking at what beliefs and rites were going on. Now, being with a group of 17 people from different denominations, I was getting a little confused by the dialogue, the conversations we're having, different interpretations of the Bible and different perspectives of the Bible and perspectives of God's Word. I was getting very confused. There was a moment where we arrived at a place called the Hill of Tara, which is an island. It's an old Celtic site. And the intention was to all of us just break away from each other and just walk around this site with your own thoughts. So I went alone and I prayed to God. I said, God, what am I doing here? You know, I'm getting different perspectives. I'm getting confused. I'm struggling a little now. I had my eyes closed and all of a sudden I had this shock go through me, like a rigid shock for about, 30 seconds. I was just absolutely still, solid. And I felt exposed. I felt naked. I felt just incredibly exposed to God. I'm not quite sure. All of a sudden, I came out of it, and again, I had this deep breath, and I felt, I'm so confident now. So I joined the others. They were in a coffee place, a cafe that was near the Hill of Tara. They were all there, and I was the last one to arrive. And when I arrived, somebody said, there's John. I'm wondering where you were. Another person said, there's a bit of a glow about him. You look happy, John. I said, yeah, I'm in the right place. I'm in a good place now. So that's happened in Ireland, and there's been other things that occurred in my life as I travelled when I was in India and a few other places. So where my life is now going, I finally made a decision to give up my radio show that I was doing, and that was on a Saturday, and I ventured into a church, a Seventh-day Adventist church, in a place called Furtry Gully in the Dandenong Ranges. And it was a Bible study group before they have the worship. And I went there just totally unannounced, just rocked up out of nowhere. And I was warmly welcomed. And I listened to the discussion, and it was so deep and so meaningful. And I had these thoughts. People were telling me, Seventh-day Adventists, they're a cult. And I discovered throughout the day, no, they weren't. They were just loving people who loved the Bible and loved exploring the Bible, etc. So in that conversation with the Sabbath class, what they were called, the Bible study group, I thought, this is great, meaningful stuff. Now, when I attended the worship, there was a pastor Pastor Trevor Rowe, and he did a sermon, and his sermon title was, "What is your purpose?" And when I heard that, it hit me. I said, this is God, this is where I am. This is my purpose. And again, I could see this God moment happening in my life. And Trevor, lovely man, he, after the worship, we talked for about an hour afterwards. And since then, I've now been following the church, and I've been involved in the church, which leads me up to where I am now. I'm basically a teacher, a facilitator of the Sabbath study groups on a Saturday morning. I'm an elder of the church. I've been an elder for several years. I've attended different missions, on Christian missions around the planet, gone to the Philippines, Tanzania, Rodrigues Island, and a few other places. So I'm also have a Zoom meeting every Wednesday night where I have a group of Christians joining me to talk about different aspects of the Bible, and that's been doing that for 18 weeks now. I'm still involved in community radio, but the whole focus now is on current affairs and looking at life in a biblical lens that I have when I interview people of all walks of life on that show. But coming here to Faith FM, it is just an amazing way I can now address current affairs issue on a more spiritual level. And I thank the management of Faith FM for allowing me to be here as a presenter of this show, A Light in the Dark. So for those people who are searching, I would say keep searching and keep following God's word. And when I look at the hymn that I started off in the topic, He leadeth me, O blessed thought, O words with heavenly comfort fraught, whatever I do, wherever I be, still it's God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me by His own hand, He leadeth me, His faithful follower I would be, for by His hand He leadeth me. You've been listening to Faith FM and The Light in the Dark. I'm John Weeks, and I'll be back next week on the program. Melbourne time, 11 a.m. On Thursday, every Thursday on the programs. And Peter Watts will join me probably in 2 weeks' time. I think he's got a commitment. So again, thank you for listening, and I appreciate it. If you want to send a text message, do so. You can find the text line in the on the website, or give it to you now, 0488 880 831. Goodbye. Thank you.